Welcome to Groundbreakers, where innovation meets insight in the world of tech and investment. I'm your host, Tarek Fouad, joining you each week from Shorooq Partners, the leading tech alternative investment manager in the Middle East and North Africa. Every episode, we dive deep with the brightest minds in tech, founders, investors, and thought leaders, uncovering the stories behind the work, startups, and the strategies that drive them forward. Today, I'm thrilled to have Dr. Bilal Baloch with us, a key partner at Shorooq Partners, where he leads and spearheads value creation and investment relations. Today, Bilal is the co-founder and previously CEO of Washington, D.C.-based Inquire AI, a software company that uses artificial intelligence to verify and deliver expert insights to organizations worldwide. He has spent the past 15 years at the intersection of research, consulting, and technology with a focus on global macro and political risk. He received his doctorate from the University of Oxford, master's from Tufts University, and bachelor's from the London School of Economics. Together, we'll explore the intricate world of value creation, uncovering how Shorooq Partners not only invests in companies, but actively enhances their growth and success. Stay tuned as we unpack the secrets of transformation into performance with Dr. Bilal Baloch. Let's get started. Bilal, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming in.
Tarek, Tico, thanks for having me.
Well, let's start off with a very basic question. Can you provide an overview of what the value creation function entails at Shorooq Partners?
Yeah, of course. So look, value creation, for those of your guests that don't know, is typically associated with private equity, right? Private investors that take larger stakes in companies, typically even ownership stakes in companies. And value creation becomes very important for them because they want to be able to help build up that business for a future sale or exit. So value creation means precisely that. How can we go beyond just the dollars and the check to be able to help that organization that we're investing in from a talent perspective, organizational effectiveness, creating efficiencies on their P&L and beyond? Which begs the question, why would a venture capital fund that typically takes minority positions, small checks in companies that are far earlier in their growth stage and maturity, why would we have a value creation practice? And I think therein lies an indication of Shorooq's vision and promise of actually being a partner to founders. But also it's an indication of the market that we're in, right? Which is one that is still very much in its infancy, is growing rapidly, but we're seeing a sort of parallel growth of both companies, regulation, and the ecosystem. So that's sort of value creation from a 30,000-foot view. And what it means at Shorooq is that we want to go beyond a check. Right. So yes, we're not majority shareholders. Yes, we're not in an ownership position, but we really want to work alongside founders to be their bandwidth and support, right? Leaning into both the opportunities and risks that exist in our market. We understand that founders here face challenges that go beyond the typical median founder in most other markets, whether that's related to currency issues, whether that's related to the acquisition of talent, whether that's related to customer success, whether that's related to regulatory challenges, whatever that might be, a founder can and should not do it alone. So value creation at Shorooq ends up meaning really three things that we boil it down to. Number one is business strategy, bread and butter stuff, right? We invest in companies that are pre-seed to Series A. Typically, that's a period in which a founder is trying to navigate product market fit, their go-to-market strategy, who their customer is, how do they get to them, essentially, these foundational questions. And we work alongside our founders in a very meaningful and deep way to figure that out. Now, of course, business strategy goes beyond that. We cover issues such as governance, board relations, all the way to product enhancements, activation challenges, etc. But in short, we're looking to help our founders figure out product market fit and go-to-market strategy. The second is around capital advisory. So how are our founders raising money? Who from? When? How do they tell that story? And then the third and final is talent. Who are they hiring? When? A lot of our founders are going from being a team of 3, 4 to overnight being able to be in a position to hire 10, 15, 20 people. That is a big ask, right? So how do they do it? How do they map it out? Organizational effectiveness, hiring the right talent, building the right culture. That is a journey that we're on with our founders.
Great. So if I am to summarize, the primary objectives of the value creation team would be in making sure that the company and the startup has the right strategies in place, the right culture and team and leadership in place, which means that probably you'll help them with some kind of talent acquisition, ensuring that the right leadership is there. But obviously, a company does require the capital and the connections it needs for it to grow. And this is where a value creation team comes in to support with capital advisory. How do you position your company to actually be successful in fundraising? And kind of finally, how do you enter new markets? What are the intelligence that you need to actually tap into new markets and to position yourself really well for that market? Now, to do all those three, I would assume that there's some sort of groundwork that you need to do with the founders to get them to that process where about they're ready for that. If you can maybe shed light on what this process looks like once we invest in a company, what happens afterwards?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And look, it's often going to how we affect that strategy is going to differ founder to founder, company to company. So I think this is exactly the right question. How do we put some semblance of a process around it, even if it is going to differ from company to company? And the way we do that is we get involved right from the outset. So, I'm always reminded of that meme of a founder is drowning and an investor is reaching out and saying, hey, let me know if you need any help. And that's essentially value creation. That's not what we do, right? We get involved right from the outset when we're even considering an investment. So value creation has to be part of even company identification, founder due diligence, and portfolio construction, right? And it's from that point on that we start to get involved with the founder. A large part of this is around expectations, right? It's not lost on me and certainly many other former operators that most often you want to be left alone to run your business. Yes, of course, you want help and you want guidance, but really that should be in the form of nudges and on demand. So we totally get that. And so what we do up front is we set that expectation. So we do what we call a reverse pitch deck. So we don't just ask our founders or potential founders to pitch us. We also pitch them. And we pitch them to tell them, hey, this is what we have on offer for you. And that includes everything from external partners and consultants that we can tap into at a moment's notice to be able to help our companies, whether that's from hiring or figuring out how to build out their finance function or how to deepen their engineering team, whether that's offshore or onshore. We walk them through our governance structures and reporting. A large part of a founder's journey is a leader's journey, right? And a leader needs to figure out how to balance different stakeholders, how to manage them, and how to speak to different audiences. We as a fund also have our investors, right, that have invested capital in us, and we are the custodians of that capital, which we're then entrusting into investing in these founders. So we have very serious and high expectations on reporting, we relay that onto our founders. We walk them through a clip at which we'd like to communicate. So on a personal level, I've always believed in over communication, right? It's something that helped me a lot throughout my career, but especially when I was a founder. So we relay that onto our founders. So it's a 360 reverse pitch of who we can tap into for them, what our expectations are of them, and the form of communication that will take place with them as well. And then, there's a secret sauce to a lot of those things that you'll have to be inside the tent with us to know further about. But that's the broad thrust of it. And then from that point on, Tariq, as you know, we then start to work very closely with our founders right from the outset. The minute the check is cut, we then start to put into place that promise. We meet with them regularly. We get to understand their business in a way that's deep and meaningful. And that's a direct function of the fact that we have a dedicated value creation practice, right? Yes, I have other areas of the business that come under my purview, but my bread and butter is to work closely with founders. And that dedicated approach is what allows us to be able to be there side by side with founders. It's not an afterthought or a footnote. And so we meet with them regularly. We're with them, coaching them, guiding them along the way, and not just the founders, also their senior teams, right? So I spend a lot of time with the VPs of sales, the VPs of customer success, the CROs, because these are the functions that need to get off the ground in the most, in the quickest and the strongest fashion for early stage companies.
I want to put my founder hat on and kind of, ask you a very, I'd say, a question that probably we all hear about. I'm a founder in, a biotech sector, right? And in many of these sectors that are very, very specific, most of us do believe that the support that we will need will have to be expert support in a sense. And, we can't all know all different sectors. So I'm curious to know from you, how do you assess the specific needs and challenges of each portfolio company, and especially the ones that do really require, deep expertise or deep sector expertise?
Yeah, great question. Look, I think the headline is between my partners and I, but also throughout our firm, we have a very deep network, quite frankly, around the world, right? And I think leveraging that network starts with a very important but humble admission, which is know what you don't know, right? So you're absolutely right. If you just even take a look at the Shorooq portfolio, we have companies in tech bio, we have companies in semiconductor chips, we have companies in ag tech. Now, I'm not a biomedical expert. I'm not a semiconductor expert. I'm not an agriculture expert. But do we have a network of some of the leading minds, both from a research, but also a business and also a technical perspective around the world? Absolutely. Right. And we're constantly refreshing and deepening those networks in the region, of course, but also around the world. Right. So a team of Shorooq partners was just in London, New York, and LA, ostensibly to connect some of our companies to growth stage capital, another value creation factor that we deliver on, which is to connect our companies to investors in growth stage capital. But we use those trips also to deepen our network, right, and refresh those relationships, and we're able to tap into them on demand for when our founders need. So that's one. I think the second is also building conviction and a thesis ourselves, right? Again, this goes back to the admission of know what you don't know. So, for example, when it comes to biotech, we as a firm have decided that we will not be investing in companies that are drug producing, right? That is a rich area of biotech, and it's an area of biotech that is flourishing right now around the world. Do we get involved? No. However, we have built a thesis and conviction that where we can help and support is around platform companies, right? These are AI or software or platform players in the biotech field that are furnishing and helping healthcare professionals and patients around the world. So that is somewhere where we've been able to develop a thesis. We know that we have the network for it. And we also know that there are adjacencies to that space that we've got deep expertise on that we can support on. For example, building out a SaaS pipeline for sales. For example, building out an advisory board to be able to negotiate large-scale enterprise deals. That's what's top of mind for a biotech player that is more platform-focused than drug-focused. So it's a combination of both an expert network that we refresh and deepen, as well as being able to find the adjacencies and a thesis area where we feel as though we can contribute.
Does sound like value creation actually starts way at portfolio management and deal sourcing, right? So right from the start, we're thinking value creation, and that we're not necessarily sourcing deals that we won't be able to add value. It's given that if we source these deals, it is because we've got what it takes to actually make them grow and sustainably expand across the region. And then curious, we've today probably around 75 plus companies from different categories, some of which are category leaders themselves. I'm curious if you have and you could share some success stories or examples of how value creation team has positively impacted a portfolio company. And by the way, well done on the roadshow that you guys have done in London and New York. I saw the pictures. Phenomenal what you guys have done there. But if you could maybe expand on this and tell us some of the success stories that you could share.
Yeah, look, of course, I'll sanitize it because so much of that is between me and my founders and companies, and we don't want to give too much away. But absolutely. I think you're exactly right. Like, what are the success stories? What are the use cases? I think in one example, we've been able to help one of our companies that is in a sector where there are pretty long sales cycles, large tickets, but very long sales cycles. And so you have to have the endurance to be able to negotiate with your prospective enterprise clients while keeping an eye on your burn rate and ensuring that you're able to keep your team motivated, right? So these are the sort of multivariate challenges that a founder may face in an environment where they have to spend weeks and months, perhaps even up to a year, in cultivating a client and getting that first sale in. And so what we were able to do in that scenario with one particular founder is help them both on the strategy piece, right, in building out that pipeline, which clients should they be targeting, which buyers they should be targeting, right down to even connecting them to specific personas of buyers and acquirers for their product and service, all the way to actually helping them negotiate on the licensing fee. Right. Let's not forget that oftentimes founders are pretty, for lack of a better word, green on negotiating multi-million-dollar licensing fees or product fees. How you navigate that, especially when you're up against an established enterprise client that's a juggernaut that has all the might of lawyers and negotiators and strategists that have been there, done that. We enter the room. Right? Not literally, but we're there in the background, helping and aiding our founders on how they should be negotiating a deal. And in this particular example, the founder was able to get over the line a highly competitive price, not just for a startup, but for the product globally, and get it through. And that will now provide pretty steep learnings on how to do this next time. It should also then lead to cutting down the sales cycle and the time to deal next time as well. And these are all the learnings that sort of update your priors, as it were, so that the founder keeps learning. Another example comes to mind on crises and governance, right? Another area that you don't know off the bat as a founder is, how do you manage your board, And how do you deal with different board dynamics? How do you deal with different vested interests within your board? You may have an investor that has financial incentives. You may have an investor that has impact investor incentives. You may have an investor that has strategic incentives because they're a corporate, right? Being able to coach and guide a founder through that, especially at tipping points where they want to raise more money or where they want to hire a critical piece of talent, or they want to roll out a new product. These are the tipping points when your investors or your board can really come to a head. And we were able to guide one of our founders through not just the dynamics at play and how to balance those interests and how to balance the power of the board, but also how to communicate effectively what the goals of the founder were. And what was in the best interest of the business, and drawing out that red thread takes time. It takes real relationship building between us as the investor as well as the founder.
To stay on the topic of boards, and one of the questions that comes to my mind would be, as we work alongside value creation team at Shorooq Partners, does it happen that we always align on what is important for the company? And how do we, and the value creation team ensure kind of alignment and collaboration between us and the founders?
Yeah, I think great question. Look, I think when I was an operator, I tried to stick to this mantra, and it's one that I say to all my founders, which is, you don't have to agree with what I say. You don't have to implement what we tell you to implement, but you, at the very least, need to give us the time and respect to explore what we've said and then come back and give us an answer. Now, why do I use the word time and respect? It's not because we're your investors and we're in this principal agent relationship. No, it's because we have the pattern recognition across the board, across now over 70 plus portfolio companies, that allows us to see stuff that you simply don't, right? So a founder is focused on one or a small set of challenges within a bounded company, right? Whereas as early stage investors, especially in a market that is in its infancy, we are seeing multiple companies face multiple challenges that you, as one of my singular founders, may actually be able to learn from. And so give due respect to that vantage point, and give the time to take on any guidance or support or counsel that we've given you, and just explore it. And if you want to come back and say, look, I've looked at this is not in line with my vision as a founder, my company goals, or my team's focus, so be it. There are no hard feelings. We are not here in the business of telling you how to run your business. We're in the business of guiding and supporting and telling you what we're seeing. And so with that what, you have to figure out the how.
Yeah. So actually, this is a great, place to plug in, for all those listeners and viewers on all social media platforms. Please drop your questions in the comment section below. We will certainly come right at you with our answers, or we'll definitely direct message you with any that we would like to take privately. And do please share this episode with other founders that you might know. Follow us on all social media platforms, including the Spotify channel, and to hear out and to see all these podcast videos that we'll do moving forwards. Groundbreakers is on YouTube and all our channels. So make sure that you share, subscribe, and you like it. Now, to move from that, Bilal, I think you touched on a very interesting point, that by the virtue of your business and by the virtue of us being investors, we see a whole lot more than than what one single founder could possibly see. from challenges to ideas to solutions, which begs the question, do we have a way for us to democratize this, intelligence and make it available as a resource to other founders? Are there, what are kind of ongoing support beyond, let's say, connecting them with media, helping them with fundraising, strategies and whatnot? Are there softer resources that you could share with the wider audience here?
Yeah, for sure. Look, I think couple of things, there's a reason people say if it's not broke, don't fix it. And there's also, the age old line of, don't create more work for yourself if it already exists somewhere. So absolutely, this is, we're not trying to build a process and a system here that could otherwise empower you. So there are many facets of value creation that over the course of the next few months and years, we're going to be platformizing. There's a reason why value creation in many markets, notably the US, is called platform, right? Indicating exactly that. How can you build a centralized resource that can empower founders to be able to tap into resources themselves? Right off the bat, I can think of templates around how to build a sales process for a B2B SaaS company, which is our typical sort of median investment is in a B2B SaaS company. What do salary benchmarks look like, right? That is market intelligence that we are gathering right now, that we will share with our founders. What should a governance structure look like? How do you even set up a board? What should a salary negotiation with talent look like? How do you most effectively think through ESOPs? How do you think through your pitch deck from seed versus Series A? What are the kind of metrics that you should be thinking through? So much of what we work with on founders can be platformized. And actually, I see that as a benefit because that then narrows the scope of the more human and relational aspects of what we do and gives us more time to focus on that, which is a key aspect of value creation. And look, at Shorooq, I think we are not just investors; we are fundamental contributors to the ecosystem. So there is no doubt in my mind that at some point we're happy to even share some of those resources widely and make them open sourced. If others can benefit from it, great. We don't see this as zero sum. We know the value we bring, and we know what we're building here, and we don't see this as a zero-sum competitive space. We will at some point be open to sharing some of those resources openly because we realize that we're in an ecosystem that is still growing and maturing.
Love it, Bilal. And maybe just to kind of close the loop on value creation to a degree, comes the point where, okay, we've added value to the portfolio, or at least we feel we did, right? And there is so much research out there that kind of shows that investors kind of estimate the value that they brought into the company. But I know that our approach is slightly different. And my question to you would be, how do you measure the effectiveness of the value creation team and our efforts with our portfolio companies?
Look, this is an age-old question and one that sort of dominates this space. I have a pretty controversial view on this. Look, I can measure, and we do as a value creation team, measure all aspects of our contribution to our companies. And we actually do some deep quantitative work on pinning together variables of input that we go through, whether that's everything from introductions we make to time spent with founders to investments made in companies and partners and processes that can help them and support them. So any input that you can think of that constitutes, adding value, whether that's time or money, we measure it, and we measure it directly, we measure it indirectly through proxies. Moreover, we go back and we ensure that we connect that as far as we can in a causal way to its relationship to the kind of outputs that we're looking for those companies around their revenue growth, around their retention rates, around the product stickiness. So we do pretty deep analysis that we use internally to really figure out, are we adding value? But I'd like for us and the industry as a whole to not focus too much purely on the measurables, right? Because not everything that is measured quantitatively is the only indication of success. Correct. Right? A founder who is leaning on us and that we are the first call for when they need support and guidance is an important metric for me. A founder that is providing us with suggestions for other founders and companies that are emerging that we should invest in is important for me. The comfort a founder feels in being able to alert me to some of the issues and problems that they may be facing before they implode is important for me. So, to the extent that you can't always measure your relationship with anyone that you care for through numbers, our relationship with our founders is similar, right? So we shouldn't fall into the sort of tyranny of numbers, as it were, and focus on, yes, those things that can be measured that help us improve. We also do an NPS score every year with our founders. But a large part of this is also the relationship itself and the long-term effectiveness that both the founder feels and experiences, and invariably what that means for us as an investor and what that brings to us by way of the success of those founders, the pipeline that those founders can support us with when it comes to other companies, and the journeys that those founders are on, that whether or not we work with them today or not, eventually we can. And that's a sort of more karmic approach to the universe that I subscribe to, that we're not in this just to transact. We're in this to build value in an ecosystem.
Beautiful put, Bilal. In 30 seconds, if you could advise founders who obviously have investors on their cap tables, whether they are our portfolio or not, on how to maximize the value creation potential from their shareholders and investors within their companies, what would you say?
30 seconds. I would say specificity. Specificity is key. I think as founders, we're so bogged down and focused on our problem sets and challenges that we can sometimes forget that our investors have those same challenges across multiple companies. And so when we're asking for help and we're asking for guidance and support, whether it's connection to a company, whether it's to re-up and follow on an investment, or simply it's just their time, we have to do so with very specific asks. Being broad, being general, sometimes not even asking and expecting your investor to just know is a recipe for disaster. So I love my founders when they are very specific, they're very direct, and they come out and they say, here's what I need. I know you're familiar with this process, or I know that you know this person at this company, or I know that you guys have dry powder for a follow-up. Here's my pitch to you. Here's what you need to use in order to facilitate 1, 2, or 3. I'm going to book a time in your diary for next week for us to go through this. Let's sit down. Please make time and be focused on being able to do it. In other words, managing up, as it were, is the most important tool in your arsenal. And if you do it and you do it well, you will extract maximum value out of your investors.
Love it, Bilal. Thank you so much.
I don't know if that was 30 seconds, but
that was excellent. It's a little bit more than 30 seconds, but here it's a difficult question to answer. Anyhow, I've put you to failure there. But thank you so much for joining us today on Groundbreakers.
Pleasure.
That's a wrap up to this enriching episode of Groundbreakers. A huge thank you to Dr. Bilal Baloch for joining us today and sharing his invaluable thoughts on value creation at Shorooq Partners. For our listeners who are currently raising capital, please reach out to us on our website, Shorooq Partners, Shorooq.com. That's Shorooq.com, SHOROOQ.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our social media channels on your favorite platforms, obviously, to catch all the latest episodes and to stay up to date with our news. Until then, stay groundbreakers and stay groundbreaking. This is Tarek